So I had a little chat with Jessica, and one of the things that inspired me about what she presented was this idea of the deeper questions. So if we think of philosophy as under the top of the iceberg, as the bit that forms the kind of informs behaviors and ways of being and knowledge, I'm thinking, well, what questions are there? So I'm thinking, have any of us got a question there that we can all pursue, or what questions are there if we go around, and then maybe we can select a question. So I think one of the questions for me that came up was around the kind of size of the meta crisis and the lifestyle, the seeming impotence of lifestyle choices, and the relationship between navigating, okay, what you can do as an individual or family, and then the kind of nature of the polycrisis. So that was something stimulated by what Jessica said, but really open to what we vote on and decide to pursue together, if there is anything.
I'm wondering if there are core beliefs in our modern philosophy that we don't pay attention to that are damaging to us.
Yeah.
I like that too.
Yeah, and sorry, and kind of weaving both questions together, but so it feels like there's a question of agency. What does it take to do what I feel would be more sustainable, more regenerative? What does it do what are the blocks from taking those actions, which is part of it, and that really feels like it feeds into Erica's question about what are the beliefs, what's below that iceberg? What are we not seeing that's keeping us in this?
Could you frame that as a question for us, Francesca? Try to put it into a sentence or something I can remember anyway.
What are the underlying and more invisible tendencies and beliefs that block us from taking coherent regenerative action? What are the more invisible beliefs that block us from taking coherent generative action?
I have another question, actually adding or in line with the two questions before. It inspired me when you're putting those questions together, and that is, what do we need to be able to see what we are not able to see now? What do we need to be to be able to see? So we are always acting or responding from a certain system and a certain pattern. What is it that we need to be able to see further than we are able to see now?
Well, listening to all of those three, for me, I prefer a question that isn't focused on what's in the way or what are we not doing, but what's the possibility in the question that leads to regenerative action. So then I get inspired by that rather than trying to remove the barriers. So Caroline, would you repeat what you said again? Because I thought that was going in that direction.
Yeah, what do we need to be able to see further or beyond what we see now?
Any contributions from you, Jessica?
Not right now.
Okay. So shall we start with that? What do we need be able to see that we're not seeing now? Is that okay?
Well, we would vote, right?
Okay.
Because
We'll all vote for ourselves.
no, I mean,
Okay, let's go. Put hands up for let's Erica's question. Francesca's question.
Do I have multiple hands?
Caroline's question. Oh, we got a tie. Oh, we got 3-2. We've got a tie. So the voting didn't work.
I wonder.
Let's start. Let's go on, Jessica.
yeah.
No, I was wondering if we can even go through those 3 questions and start with Erica's question, because it feels like they are feeding into each other.
Yeah, let's do that then. Start with Erica's question to Francesca's, then Caroline's.
Good.
Okay, so to rephrase or restate,
Mm-hmm.
what in our existing modern core belief system do we need to, or might we be able to alter to see things in this more rewilding perspective?
Okay.
Now, personally, I've read quite a few books where they tell me Descartes is one of those pieces that we want to let go of. I think, therefore I am, and being locked inside our own self.
I also wonder, and this is, I don't have an answer to that at all, but I wonder in how far it's really letting go of the belief systems, or rather in adding on. So for example, sometimes with this mechanistic thinking, I think like, it's also really useful in some ways. So how can I have this integrative aspect of adding to that? At the same time, I'm sure we can think of some belief systems that we really need to let go of now that I second.
Yeah.
second
Some may
that.
fall into the yes and category, while
Yeah.
some really need unlearning.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with that. Yeah.
What is it then that we should unlearn? Because I don't know if I don't know about the unlearning, because then I put effort in something to get rid of. And
Or to
actually,
change.
Sorry?
Much of unlearning is really a re-perspectivizing, where one example might be my inherent belief that there is a truth, one truth that that wins and that is reality, where I am learning now to understand reality as a conglomeration of our perspectives. That is, we create it rather than if there's a checklist of a good life.
Right. So basically, you're saying to have the courage to question the things that you're so convinced of.
Exactly. Yes,
To
those core
discuss
belief
again, like
things that we take for granted.
that we take for
because-
granted, and we take more for granted, or we are much more immersed in our way of thinking, or relating to each other, or relating to nature, or regenerate. All these
those things that have become our bias is how we
Yeah,
just do things.
yeah.
Yes.
So that actually basically means we need them basically the courage to question, or to question the things that are so much our identity, or that we are built from.
One of the things I recognize in what you're describing there, Erica, is this, the first step is the kind of cognitive, modernity's the root of this. I don't think that that's that difficult if you're interested, but it's more catching it in motion as oneself and enacting it in some way, as Jessica was describing about relational worldview. Actually, she was conducting her research in not a very relational way. So we can have that recognition and that we know. But when, I think for me, real change is happening when it's caught in the moment, because then you see it in action, and then somehow, because it's been seen in action, it's easier to perceive, or it's more transformative. That would be my suggestion.
One of the belief systems that comes to my mind is this human exceptionalism.
Yeah.
It's so ingrained in myself included, and many of us.
And really up until 30, 40 years ago, they truly believed that animals didn't feel pain, and we're pushing our own feelings on them.
Yeah. And I find it crazy to think about it still, and that it's still for like insects, for example, are not really regarded in having sentient, or there's such interesting research now about plants being sentient as well. And I love to start thinking in that way. It's crazy.
I think I get a bit, well, I've been in green circles for 20 years where people, human exceptionalism gets so deconstructed, people hate the fact that human beings are on the planet. So there's a way that, I mean, you can hate mankind. I don't think that gets us very far. I don't think it actually helps restore and replenish the world. So, and also in terms of sentience, unless there's some other side, the most sophisticated sentience on the planet is us. And we've created the Anthropocene. So somehow we need to use that gift to serve the planet. That would be my counterpoint to, yes, colonialism, capitalism, puts human consciousness above everything else. But there also something is exceptional that's a gift that needs to be repurposed.
I think there's an assumption there that you're making, Dave, that we are at the pinnacle of that. There are questions coming up about octopodes and whales and dolphins being really high-level intelligences that we simply can't communicate with.
Yeah, but they haven't created cities, metros, airplanes, swamp pollution. So they're less of an issue than us.
There's actually, I don't know if this is, but
Go ahead.
because this is also somehow, it might be an assumption. It's in terms of, I have read this book which was describing how other species are, really every species basically is creating the environment as well.
Yeah.
So and for example, quite sophisticatedly. And yeah, so it's hard to define, I think, if we really are. I mean, there is something unique about us. I don't want to deny that, but there's also something unique about octopus, for example, or bees, which no other species has. Yeah.
Each of whom transforms their environment to enable them to reach the heights of what they consider civilization. Yeah. Yeah, I find that very interesting, the anthropocentric view of all of those achievements, and that there is a tension. Obviously, we have a very high level of achievement, and that we are pushing toward even more. That's a big part of that belief system, is that constant progress will win, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Well, we can also really question, if that is a real achievement. I mean, in itself, it's an achievement, but what we created, but the purpose is until now all to comfort us. So how high is actually the achievement of our purpose?
Since we are not considering the relations outside of our
So it's actually still very much of a kind of a survival level, you know, the more comfortable we are, or the more we are able to produce more children or to occupy the planet, is all to conserve our species. It's not on the level of thinking of recognizing that we part of nature and part of this planet where we are complete, and this universe basically. So how much are we just also limited in what we are able to see?
That's interesting. What you see is all there is, sort of that psychological concept, and how much we have focused on our own being, and we no longer see the nature that's around us that supports us.
Yeah, exactly. So it's an achievement, but it's very limited achievement. It's quite sophisticated achievement, but the purpose is quite narrow.
Lovely, yeah. I think that, and we were mentioning indigenous cultures, I mean, they have much more healthy view of man's role in ecology, where that humans and all living systems co-create the living universe together. So that would be a healthier alternative than automatic hierarchies and colonial assumptions.
Talking of hierarchies, what happens when we drop down from the mind, the cognitive, the building, doing, achieving, consuming, producing, and like drop into the heart, drop into the belly, and spend some time there instead?
And
I think
for
that's
me,
where you're
that
sitting.
transition-
That's where you're sitting, isn't it, Francesca? I can hear it in the tone of your voice. It's beautiful.
Down in the diaphragm. I personally, when switching that context, find more cycles than arrows, so that it's less about achieving an end result that has multiple steps than appreciating where I've come from and where I'm heading as an arc.
What do those arcs feel like to you?
I find that they go very similarly to the seasons, and I like the 7 directions of the sort of Native American indigenous culture, where it talks about beginning in the East and how youth and that endless drive to achieve start. And then you go into the summer and you're just busy keeping things going. While in the fall, you do have to let go and find unlearning. And there's a sadness and a grief to entering into wisdom in the winter before things start up again. And so I personally go through those cycles, and I've watched my emotions change on the beginnings to the endings. And it's a very different approach than my childhood, which was, you know, complete school, complete university, get a good job, get a house. How do those cycles show up for you, Carolina?
Well, it's interesting, since I live here in this area. We live here now for 4 years, and before we lived in the city. And when you live in the city, there is a morning and an afternoon and an evening. But there you hardly feel the seasons, or actually the seasons are in the way to get your work done. When you are outside of the city and you have a garden, and I take care of the garden teaches me how to be patient, how to respond, to nurture what needs to be done. In the morning, I want to go out and walk passing the trees and look what they need, or the plants, and see what they need. And they nurture me. So I got more and more in touch with, it's spring here, and now the summer is coming, and they are singing, that the plants are basically singing because they're happy to come out and to flower. And then but it's natural, it's like the flow of energy, but it really asks me to bow down to that flow, to that tempo. So, that's, so it doesn't feel like unlearning, but it does more feel like being humble to where I am in that place and see what I can give, but also what I shouldn't do. Like not screaming to the plants, come on, I just want to have the fruits now.
A deadline here.
Hey, deadline. I have visitors. I want to make a dessert. So strawberries get red. No way. You have to wait. Oh, tomorrow. No, not yet. The day after, maybe. So that's how it works for me. But it's a shift. It's a shift.
Yes. And appreciating that natural cycle made me start to approach my teams who are developing things and writing code and saying, where are you in this cycle?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And also to feel, so what is my gift here? What is it that I can give at this point?
Yes.
What is asked from my neighbors? What is asked from my husband? What is asked from my family? What is asked from my body, my intellect? What is my cat? Or, what is...
Sounds like your vision has expanded
Yeah.
very much to see more need around you.
Yeah. And it's also like, it's almost not even a need. It's almost like, who's going to respond to that wants to emerge?
So midwifing.
Yeah, I
Gardening.
think so. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Jessica, from the mechanical engineering side, I know that tends to have a fairly standard upward development line and a burn down chart of how much left there is to do. When plans change and you see that wilding philosophy in there, how much does it change that graph approach?
Yeah, it's something I'm still in my life experimenting with quite a lot, of this idea of having any, and it sounds a bit harder than I mean it, but to have direction, even like, in how far should I steer it, even in any direction, and how far is it possible to really just let go of these expectations. And especially I find it so interesting in terms of sustainability and creating new futures, but can we really imagine what these futures are going to be, and is there really this goal to attain? And yeah, it's something I've just written about quite extensively this morning, actually, of how far could I lean into this, having the feeling of I arrived without, and it's so challenging. I have moments where I feel that, but like 5 minutes later, I'm like, okay, but this and this and this. I would love to, sometimes I have this mind-blowing insight for like a few minutes of like, wow, nothing is ever going to change. Like this is it. Either it's this or there's nothing else, in this sense. And I would love to embrace that more. Like I really want to practice this in a much more all life encompassing way in a sense.
I'd like to pick that point up and return to the thread about human exceptionalism, because I think after everything was said, I realized one of the reasons I'm quite strong in that direction is not because of I don't see humans as part of an ecology on the planet or superior or whatever, but I'm much more interested in a participatory universe. But I think that particular perspective can blinker one to actually enjoy, from really enjoying the gifts of one's own human consciousness, to enjoy one's presence, to enjoy one's senses, to enjoy one's life here in the moment on the planet as it is now. And if you've got a filter of human exceptionalism, we're not so special, we're not the dominant ones, we're not in power like we thought we would. To me, that is a veil that obscures the possibility. And as we could potentially be the last humans on the planet, why shouldn't we appreciate the fullest extent of life as it is, that it's possible to enjoy and participate right now together? So that's sort of where I was coming from when I'm pushing back against that notion.
It's interesting that you went into this direction. You were just, and maybe let me know if I misunderstood something, but when you started, I was like, yeah, this is what you mean by human exceptionalism, in the sense, rather agreeing with what you said before, almost, because I thought like, this capacity of thinking so far ahead into the future and making plans, that's something that I know animals can do that to some degree, but I think the extent to which we can do that, that's really something that's quite unique about humans. Yeah.
But I think it's like, can we appreciate the gift of it in the way that Caroline was saying? Our achievements are somewhat limited because we don't really fully appreciate the whole blessing that it is to be alive, and we're not in touch with the many dimensions that would make our life feel so fulfilled that we wouldn't need all the stuff we think we need.
Talking about the questions that we are asking, that when we talk about fulfillment, one thing that's been on my mind recently, more in the forefront of my mind, is this idea of asking how to live a good life. And that's a question that's been with me for so long, like, how do we live a good life? But then I noticed maybe that's the wrong question. Like, that's already making the assumption that my purpose is somehow to live a good life. But what if that is, depending on how I define good, I think, I know some philosophers say good is anything from being very social to enjoyment to what have you. But maybe it's not about living a good life. Maybe it's about living, I don't know what type of life, but this has already, there's already something implicit in that assumption that maybe that's the wrong question.
It does make it feel like a good life is one static thing that is achieved as a check mark, rather than how do I live today to its best, or how do I best serve my ecosystem today, as Carolina was giving examples of.
And it's also, there's also the assumption, how do I live a good life? Like, if the life you're in right now is not good, so something has to change. So you have to do something more, instead of, do we have the courage to absolutely enjoy life fully, right how it is now? And I really talk about courage, because then there is nothing to complain. Then there's everything to feel and to sense and to think about. I mean, it's almost like an unbearable likeness of being, because then you see that life fundamentally is so positive. And do we have the courage to fully experience that and be there for it, to respond to it, do something with it or not, but not to run away from it or trying to find your problem so you can put your teeth in them because you have to work through. You know, we're so used always to do that. It's not good enough.
Yes.
But it's like, wow. And I also think that when we really deeply enjoy and value it, new things will emerge. That is not a solution for a problem, but is a new thing that wants to be born. But we don't know where it will come from, because it's not
Can't see it yet.
in a way of our control. It's just because there is a life force that's looking for a new form, or I don't know.
And that's very different from that concept of setting goals and making the small steps along the way, because we don't know where we're
Potential.
going. Yes.
Sounds like this is much, we're going like below the layers of the iceberg, seeing what is, and it's like, okay, this is human potential. Potential for what? Free will, to the extent of it can be, it can go in one direction, it can go another. And yes, there is suffering, there is pain, there is difficulty, there is the cycle, there is loss, there is also joy. And widening that range, being able to hold that range, feels like being in a level, at a point of tolerance of more, holding more of what it is to be human, deeper, wider, and together, and seeing that in each other and supporting that, mirroring.
And I also feel that, you know, when you said lost and pain, that is, the lost is not one-dimensional, but it's multidimensional. I mean, for example, last November, I lost my mom unexpectedly. I mean, she was 90 and all good reason why it's good for her, but unexpectedly, and I'm still mourning about it. And sometimes I really have to cry and feel the pain of her not being there. But there is something, and I don't know exactly what it is, but it's something really beautiful about the love that comes free, or her being more in me than before. And I don't completely know how it works, but I also discover by that lost is, it's multidimensional. It's almost like it's pain, and there is beauty also. And that's, I think it's fascinating because it's multidimensional. It's so human. Yeah.
I think
don't know to say more about it, but yeah.
we have a hard time holding all of those things in tension at once. And it's easy to simplify down and just say, I'm grieving, without saying what that means, and that you do have both joy and pain in great amounts at the same time. I think living in that tension of multiple things is a skill maybe I personally have lost and need to foster.
I'm wondering if that silence might pertain to a question, or discourse has run its course. Has anyone got anything more burning or else they want to contribute and explore? Or you want the silence to continue?
I'm grateful to you, Dave. This has been an excellent conversation.
Thank you. I'm glad you joined and contributed. It was beautiful.
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting this.
Yeah, I'm going to take that as a sign we're going to close. I'm not going to include the checkout, so I'm just going to stop the recording here. I think